everyone, and welcome to Storytime with Jocelyn. This week is the last week for Disney princesses in the month of June, and we're going to be highlighting Princess Jasmine from the story of Aladdin this week. So, we're going to begin reading the first 7 chapters of the Disney's movie version of Aladdin. So, let's get started. Aladdin. In a faraway land where the sun scorches the fiery desert, there lies an ancient secret. It is a lamp long forgotten and buried deep beneath the shifting sands. It is small and simple. It bears no fancy design and contains no precious jewels. To all but the wisest among us, it would appear dull and worthless. But this lamp is not what it seems. Long ago, Jocelyn, it held the greatest power in all the lands of Arabia. Its magic changed forever the course of a young man's life. A young man who, like the lamp, was more than what he seemed. The tale begins on a dark night where a dark man waits with a dark purpose. Chapter 1, Jocelyn. The man's name was Jafar, and he was prepared to wait. His beady eyes and pointy turban gave him the look of a cobra about to strike. Perched on his shoulder, a parrot cocked its head impatiently. Beneath him, his horse shifted and gave a restless snort. The treasure was buried out there somewhere. Only one person would be able to find it. One. The person who possessed 2 halves of an ancient scarab. Jafar had 1 half, and soon he would have the other. Then the treasure would be his, and with it, he would become the most powerful man in Agrabah. In the stillness, Jafar heard the chomping and clopping of hooves as a rider approached. The man was a common thief named Gazim, and he agreed to bring Jafar the other half of the scarab in return for part of the treasure Jafar had promised. Jafar had lied. "You are late," he said. Gazim dismounted and bowed his head. Jafar was the royal vizier, the chief advisor to the sultan. It was not wise to upset him. "My apologies, O patient one," Gazim said. Jafar glared. "You have it then." With a grin, the thief pulled half the scarab from his pocket. Jafar reached for it, but the thief held it back. "What about the treasure you promised me?" Screech! The parrot swooped down from Jafar's shoulder, grabbed the scarab, and dropped it into Jafar's bony hand. "Trust me, Jafar. You'll get what's coming to you." Do you know what a scarab is? If you look close, it's an ancient beetle. Quickly, he took out his half of the scarab. He could feel his blood pounding as he fit the halves together. They glowed. Then, boom! A clap of thunder shook the desert. The scarab leaped from Jafar's hand as if it were alive. It screeched across the dunes in a blaze of light. Jafar sprung on his horse. "Quickly, follow the trail!" he shouted. Gazim mounted his own horse and raced after Jafar. Bright as a comet, the scarab shot toward a small sandstone. It circled around it, then paused in the air. Crack! The scarab suddenly split into halves again, plunged into the rock, each half wedging into a small hole. Jafar stopped his horse and jumped off. The pulsing scarab stared out at him like a huge pair of eyes, Jocelyn. An exulting chill bolted through him. There was no turning back now. The earth began to tremble, the strange eyes flashing widely. Gazim cowered in fright. Slowly, the rock began to grow upward. It expanded in all directions. Changing shape, the eyes remained, and now ears formed, then a nose. Last was a mouth huge and gaping. A column of white light burst from within, almost blinding Jafar. The rock was now a tiger face, frozen in a furious, silent roar. Jafar stared in awe. His frightening parrot clung to his shoulder, digging in its claws. By Allah! Gazim murmured, a tiger god! At last, Lago. Jafar said to his parrot, after all my years of searching, the cave of wonders. Ark! Iago screeched. Cave of wonders! Jafar pulled Gazim close to him. Now remember, he snarled, bring me the lamp. The rest of the treasure is yours, but the lamp is mine. Gazim swallowed hard. He turned toward the mouth of the tiger god and began walking slowly. The lamp! Iago repeated long enough for Gazim to hear. Then he leaned in close to Jafar's ear and whispered, Geez, where'd you dig this bozo up? Shh! Jafar snapped. Iago allowed no one to know he could speak like a human. No one except his master. That is. But right now, Jafar was in no mood to listen. He was watching and waiting. Who dares disturb my slumber? Boomed the tiger god, its voice rumbling in the ground once again. It is I, Gazim, a humble thief. His voice was a nervous screech and his knees felt weak and shaky. Know this, the tiger god said. Only one may enter here. One whose tags hide a heart that is pure. Rags. The diamond in the rough. Gazim cast a doubtful glance behind him. Go on, Jafar commanded. Frightened, Gazim turned back toward the cave's opening. A flight of stairs led downward into what? He couldn't tell. Carefully, he began to walk down. The tiger god's lustrous roar was like nothing Jafar had ever heard. Gazim's shriek could only be heard for a moment, and then the tiger god's mouth slammed shut, silencing the thief forever. I guess he wasn't the diamond in the rough. Seek thee out, the diamond in the rough, the tiger god commanded. Slowly the rock collapsed into a mountain of sand. The scarab's halves frightened and went dark. Jafar stared in silence as Iago duffed into the mound and resurfaced, spitting out sand. He picked up the scarab halves and flew back to Jafar. I can't believe this, Iago said. We're never going to get a hold of that stupid lamp. Patience, Iago, patience. Gazim was obviously less than worthy. Now there's a big surprise, Iago said, rolling his eyes. So, what are we going to do? We've got a big problem here, Jocelyn. But Jafar just reached out, squeezed Iago's beak shut. He needed quiet. Only one may enter, he said. I must find this one, this diamond in the rough. The diamond in the rough, Jafar understood what that meant. A common person, poor and unwashed, who had shining qualities within. There was only one way to seek this person out, and Jafar knew just how to do it. An evil grin spread across his face. He hadn't gotten the treasure tonight, but no matter. He was close. Oh, so close. And before long, his waiting would be over. Chapter 2, Jocelyn. Stop! Thief! The guard shouted at the top of his lungs as he chased a raggedly dressed boy through the crowded marketplace of Agrabah. The boy zigzagged skillfully around the outdoor stands, fruit sellers, clothing merchants, bakers, trinket sellers. In his right hand, he clenched a loaf of bread. Beside him ran a small monkey dressed in a vest and a hat. "I'll get you, street rat!" the guard shouted. Street rat. If there was one name Aladdin hated, that was it. The Sultan's guards looked down on the poor people of Agrabah, people such as himself. Sure, he swiped food sometimes. He had no choice. He had to eat. But he was no street rat. "Come on, Abu," Aladdin called to his pet monkey. He ran into a nearby house, leaped onto its low, flat roof. Then he and Abu splinted from the rooftop to rooflock, landing on a pair of clotheslines and finally falling into a soft pile of clothes. Instantly, it was snatched up by a pair of thick, hairy hands. It was Rasul, the head of the Sultan's guard. Rasul was a man of few words, but there was one thing he did well. It was catching young thieves. "Gotcha," Rasul said, lifting Aladdin up. Abu leaped onto Rasul's shoulders, shoved the guard's turban over his eyes, and Aladdin quickly winched himself free, and he and Abu bolted away. They roved through the marketplace, past a camel salesman, a rug merchant, a jewelry cart, and suddenly Abu stopped. The little monkey's eyes were fixed on the cart. Abu had one big weakness: sparkling jewels. He crouched beside the cart, Jocelyn, reaching up to steal a pendant. "Stop him!" someone yelled. Dozens of faces turned toward Abu. Aladdin spun around. He grabbed Abu by the back of his neck. To their right, the guards charged close. To their left, angry townspeople closed in. Aladdin and Abu ran straight ahead toward a stairway that led to a tall tower. They raced up the stairs and in through a window. Aladdin grabbed a rug and, using it as a parachute, he and Abu leapt from another window to the other side of the building. They jumped again, this time landing safely in a little quiet alley darkened by the shadow of the Sultan's palace doors. There the sounds of the marketplace were muffled. Aladdin exulted and sat down. He was starving. "All right, Abu, now we feast," he said, breaking the loaf of bread in half. But before he could eat, he saw a frail boy and a girl in the shadows. They said nothing, but their wide, staring eyes spoke for them. Aladdin could tell they hadn't eaten in days. He looked at the bread. He had risked his life to get it, and his mouth was watering like crazy, but he couldn't let them go hungry. With a sigh, he held his half out to the children. "Go on, take it," he said softly. Abu scowled, and he handed over his piece too. The girl smiled. She took Abu's bread and gave him a gentle stroke. Abu liked that, just like Jocelyn does. People didn't usually treat him so nicely. He tipped his hat, stretched away proudly, and smacked right into Aladdin's legs. But Aladdin didn't even notice. His eyes were focused on something straight ahead. Wow, Jocelyn, Aladdin murmured. The marketplace had fallen silent. Right through the middle rode a man on a horse. He wore robes of finest silk studded with jewels, As the people cleared the way and bowed, the man thrust his chin proudly in the air. Aladdin wandered out of the alley and into the crowd. Everyone was murmuring about the rich-looking man. "That's Prince Hakim," a woman said, "on his way to the palace." "Just another suitor for the princess," an old man said, shaking his head. "He'll ask her to marry her, and she'll throw him out. Just like all the others." Aladdin stared in awe. If the princess could reject someone like that, she must be a pretty amazing girl. Aladdin felt a tug on his leg. Abu was pulling him toward the crowd. Aladdin could see a group of poor children clustering too close to Prince Akam's horse, and suddenly the horse buckled, frightening the children. And the prince shouted, "Out of my way, you filthy rats!" Angered, Aladdin broke through the crowd and stuttered right up to Prince Akam. "If I was as rich as you," he yelled, "I could afford some manners." "Out of my way, you flea-bitten street rat!" Prince Akam kicked his horse and brushed past Aladdin, knocking him down into the mud. Burning with anger, Aladdin leapt to his feet and started to run after the prince's horse. "I'm not worthless and I'm not a street rat!" he shouted. He ran all the way to the palace doors. With a loud clang, they slammed the doors in his face. "And I don't have fleas!" he shouted at the closed doors. Prince Akam never even turned around. Aladdin bowed his head sadly and slumped back into town. As a chilly darkness settled over Agrabah that night, Aladdin and Abu climbed to the roof of a crumbling old building. There was only a few mats and a couple of worn-out pillows. But Aladdin and Abu, it was their home. Abu curled up on a pillow and closed his eyes. With a smile, Aladdin covered him with a soft mat. "Someday, Abu, things are going to be different," he said. "We'll be dressed in robes instead of rags. And we'll be inside a palace looking out instead of outside looking in." In the distance, the Sultan's palace loomed majestically. "That'll be the life, Abu, huh? To be rich, live in a palace, and never have any problems at all." With a sigh, Aladdin lay down to sleep. Oh, so he thinks he knows. Everyone has problems. Chapter 3, Jocelyn. Yeah! The scream came from the palace of Montrachet. It echoed into the throne room where the Sultan covered his ears. Whack! The door slammed against the throne room wall and stomped an angry Prince Akam. "I've never been so insulted!" he shouted. "Good luck marrying her off." But, the Sultan spattered. The prince marched right by him and out the other door, revealing a big hole in the seat of his pants. "Jasmine!" the Sultan bellowed. He was a roly-poly old man, happy and kind and loved by his subjects. Only one person could get upset, and that was his daughter, Princess Jasmine. He loved her dearly, but she was so stubborn. All he wanted to do for her was for her to marry a prince, Jocelyn. Every princess did it, but Jasmine. No one was good enough for her. He waddled into the palace Monterey. The sound of water was all around, flowing down marble waterways, spreading into pools from half-carved fountains. It was the most beautiful place in all of Agrabah, but the Sultan noticed none of that now. "Jasmine!" he called again. "Roar!" came a soft growl. That wasn't really soft. There was a flash of orange and black. The Sultan found himself face to face with a tiger, its teeth cramped on the missing piece of Prince Ahmad's pants. "Confound it, Raja!" the Sultan said, grabbing the ripped material. Raja slipped away into the back of the garden where the Sultan's daughter sat at the edge of a fountain. "Oh, Father, Raja was just playing," she said, gently stroking the tiger. "You were just playing with that overdressed, self-absorbed Prince Ahmad, weren't you?" she said to Raja. Jasmine was more than beautiful. Do you see Raja? Princes from miles around risked their lives crossing the desert to see her. Each vowed to conquer the world for her love. But as for Jasmine, well, she had enough of hat-witted princesses and bragging noblemen. If only one of them would show a little intelligence, some kindness, honesty, and a sense of humor. Wouldn't that hurt? That would not hurt, no. The Sultan shook his head. "Dearest, you've got to stop rejecting every suitor. The law says you must be married to a prince by your next birthday. You'll only have 3 more days." "The law is wrong," Jasmine replied. "Father, I hate being forced to marry. If I do marry, I want it to be for love." "It's not just a law," the Sultan said gently. He hesitated for a minute before continuing. "I'm not going to be around forever, and I just want to make sure you're taken care of. But I've never done anything on my own. And I've never had any real friends except you, Raja," Jasmine said, giving her tiger a pat on the head. "I've never been outside the palace walls." "I know, Jocelyn." "But Jasmine, you're a princess," cried the Sultan. "Then maybe I don't want to be a princess anymore." Ugh! The Sultan threw up his hands and stomped back into the throne room. A shadow appeared behind them. It was a tall, thin shadow of a man in a pointed turban with a parrot on his shoulder. I wonder who that is. In the right hand was a long staff with a snake head carved at the top. The Sultan turned around. "Ah, Jafar, my most trusted advisor," he said. "I am desperate in need of your wisdom. My life is but to serve you," said Jafar with a tight, thin-lipped smile. "Jasmine refused to choose a husband," the Sultan said. "I am at my wit's end." "Ark! Wit's end!" Iago squawked. The Sultan reached into a china bowl and took out a cracker. "Have a cracker, pretty Polly," he said. It was that one thing Iago hated. It was eating crackers, Jocelyn. Eating crackers. "Have a cracker!" Especially the dry-stilled ones the Sultan had. He particularly gagged as the Sultan stuffed the crackers into his beak. "Your Majesty certainly has a way with dumb animals," Jafar remarked. "Now then, I may be able to find a solution to your problem. But it would require the use of the blue diamond." The Sultan backed away. He clutched at the finger of a ring on his finger. "My ring has been in the family for years," he protested. Jafar held his staff in front of the Sultan's eyes. The eyes of the snake head began to glow. "It's necessary to find the princess a suitor." "Isn't it?" Jafar said, moving closer. "Don't worry. Everything will be fine." The Sultan could not stop staring at the snakehead. His willpower was draining away. "Everything will be fine," he droned as he slipped the ring off his finger and gave it to Jafar, Jocelyn. Jafar smiled. "You are most gracious, my sire," Jafar said. "Now run along and play with your toys." "Yes," the Sultan said dreamily, waddling away. Jafar turned and left the throne room. As he hurried down a marble corridor, Iago began spitting out the crackers. "Ugh. I can't take take it anymore. If I have to choke down one more of these moldy, disgusting crafters, I will grab him by the neck and... Calm yourself, Iago, said Jafar. This blue diamond will reveal to us the diamond in the rough. The one who can enter the cave and bring us the lamp. At the end of the corridor, Jafar entered his private quarters. Soon I will be Sultan, not that jumbo portion of stupidity. And then, Iago crowded, I'll stuff crackers down his throat. At the other end of the dark room, Jafar pushed open a secret door, revealing a spiral staircase. He began climbing the stairs that led to his private laboratory. In every corner of the room, potions and bottles and glass beakers, there was a huge quadrant in the back and an enormous hourglass on the old table. Jafar walked toward the hourglass, holding the blue diamond. Now, Iago, we go to work. Early the next morning, Jasmine crept to the palace walls. Raja followed close by. His shoulders slumped in sadness. I'm sorry, Raja, Jasmine said, but I can't stay here and have my life lived for me. Tears welled up inside her. It was hard enough running away from her father, but having to look into Raja's eyes made it more painful than she could have imagined. She had to make her move now, otherwise she might change her mind. Stepping onto Raja's back, Jasmine quickly climbed the garden wall. Pausing at the top, she said, I'll miss you, Raja. Goodbye. Then she disappeared over the side into the land of her subjects, a land she had never, ever visited before. What's wrong with the Sultan's eyes? Chapter 4. Breakfast is served. Yabo. Jocelyn, you are in a mood this morning. Y'all get to see her when she gets in kind of in a mood and wants attention. I'm trying to read to her, but she's just not letting it happen. She want to scratch her head all day. So I'm just going to let her scratch her head. So don't blame me for messy hair. All right. Chapter 4, Jocelyn. Breakfast is served, Abu, said Aladdin as he cracked open a ripe, juicy melon. Perched on an awning, the two friends had a perfect view of the bustling marketplace below. All around them, merchants announced their wares. Buy a pot, brass and silver, called one. Sugar dakes and figs, shouted another as he strolled by a crowd of people watching a fire breather. Pistachio nuts, let the fire breather roast them for you. Fresh fish, cried a third vendor. Aladdin watched as the man waved a large fish high in the air, almost smacking it into the place of the young girl, who was covered with thin cloak. She staggered backward, bumping right into the fire breather. He belched a long blum of fire. Ah! The startled girl cried out. Excuse me, I am so sorry. Aladdin stopped eating. He couldn't help staring. Maybe it was her eyes, so deep and kind, or her hair, like a waterfall made of the blackest silk, or her perfect skin, or her... Aladdin blushed. He had never thought of girls that way, but this one, well, this one was different. Some special somehow. Aladdin watched her as she made her way through the market. Jasmine spotted a ragged little boy standing in the days in front of a mound of ripe fruit. You must be hungry, she said, taking an apple from the cart. Here you go. The child beamed. Clutching the apple, he ran away. You'd better pay for that, the vendor said. Pay? Jasmine looked puzzled. She had never paid for anything in her life. I'm sorry, sir, I don't have any money, but I'm sure I can get some from the Sultan. Thief! The seller grabbed her arm. With her other hand, he pulled out a shiny knife. Do you know what the penalty is for stealing? Suddenly, Aladdin darted between them and grabbed the vendor's arm. Thank you, kind sir. I'm so glad you found my sister, he said. Turning to Jasmine, he scolded, I've been looking all over for you. Jasmine was about to protest when Aladdin whispered, just play along. The seller pulled Aladdin aside and said, you know this girl? She said she knew the Sultan. She's my sister, Aladdin replied. Then lowering his voice, he said, sadly, she's a little crazy. She thinks the monkey is the Sultan. Quickly, Jasmine began bowing to Abu. Oh, wise Sultan, she said, how may I serve you? People in the crowd began to laugh. Aladdin helped Jasmine up and said, now come along, sis. Time to see the doctor. As the seller stared at Aladdin and Jasmine, Abu snatched apples off the cart and stuffed them into his vest. Jasmine stopped in front of the camel and said, hello, doctor. How are you? No, not that one, Aladdin said. Come on, sis. He called over his shoulder, come on, Sultan. Abu followed after them. He puffed out his chest, intimidating the Sultan, and 3 apples tumbled out of his vest. The seller turned red with fury. Come back here, you little thieves! He shrieked. But it was too late. The 3 of them broke into a run and disappeared into the crowd. At the palace, Jafar chuckled with evil glee. Iago was frantically turning a wheel that was attached to a generator. Electricity spurted from the generator into a bubbling cauldron. Slowly, a shimmering blue cloud formed in the air. The blue diamond was encased in a frame above an enormous hourglass. Jafar swept his arm in front of it, chanting, part sands of time, reveal to me the one who can enter the cave. He flipped the hourglass over. Then with a loud crack, a bolt of lightning shot from the cloud. It struck the diamond, which exploded into a pulsing blue light. The sand in the hourglass began to glow and swirl. Slowly, an image began to form, an image of Aladdin running through the marketplace. Well, at least we know what the diamond in the rough is. That's the clown we've been waiting for. Iago blurted out, yes, a ragged little urchin. How perfect. He'll never be missed. Jafar looked at Iago with a twisted grin. Let's have the guards extend him an invitation to the palace, shall we? Aladdin, Abu, and Jasmine jumped from the rooftop to rooftop in the fireplace. Jocelyn, you got me sidetracked. They jumped from rooftop to rooftop in the marketplace. Aladdin could tell Jasmine had never been to that part of Akrabar before, but he had to admit one thing. When it came to roof hopping, she was a fast learner. When Aladdin and Abu finally reached their home, Jasmine looked around and said, is this where you live? Ooh. Yeah, just me and Abu, Aladdin replied. It's not much, but it has a great view. He pointed toward the palace. Amazing, huh? I wonder it could be like to live there and have servants and valets, Jasmine sighed, and people who tell you where to go and how to dress. That's better than here, Aladdin replied. Always scraping for food and dunking guards. Never being free to make your own choices, Jasmine said. Always feeling trapped, they said at the same time. Their eyes met and they smiled. Aladdin blushed, then quickly took an apple from Abu and tossed it to Jasmine. So where are you from? He asked, changing the subject. What does it matter? Jasmine answered. I ran away. and I'm not going back. My father is forcing me to get married." "That's awful," Aladdin said. Jasmine's eyes met his again. Suddenly, Aladdin couldn't speak, couldn't even move. Jocelyn's strange feelings raced around him inside, feelings so strong. They made him dizzy. Who was this mysterious girl? Aladdin could hear Abu chattering wildly, but he didn't listen. All he could see, all he could hear was Jasmine. "Here you are," a voice roared. Aladdin snapped out of his trance. Below them stood a group of Sultan's guards, swords drawn. Aladdin snapped out of his trance. "They're after me!" Aladdin and Jasmine together. They stopped, looking at each other in confusion, and then they smoked again at the same time. "They're after you?" But there was no time to figure things out. Aladdin looked over the opposite side of the roof. There was a pile of hay below. "Do you trust me?" he asked Jasmine, pulling her close. Their eyes locked again. "Well, yes," she replied. "Then jump!" Aladdin and Jasmine and Abu leapt off the roof. They landed safely in the hay and quickly got to their feet. Aladdin spun around and ready to sprint for his life, Jocelyn. But it was too late. Rasul loomed over him, smirking. "We just keep running into each other, huh, street rat? It's the dungeon for you, boy." Jasmine stepped in Rasul's path. "Let him go!" "Look, a street mouse!" Rasul snarled. With a laugh, he pushed Jasmine to the ground. Jasmine sprung to her feet. Anger flushed in her eyes. Regularly drawing back her hood, she said in a firm, commanding voice, "Unhand him by the order of the princess." "The princess?" Aladdin repeated. The guards froze in shock. "Princess Jasmine?" Rasul said. What are you doing outside the palace?" "Just do as I command," Jasmine said. "Release him." "I would, princess," Rasul replied, "except my orders come from Jafar." "You'll have to take it up with him." And with a sheepish shrug, he dragged Aladdin away. "Believe me, I will," Princess Jasmine said. Back at the palace, Jasmine stormed into Jafar's chamber. There he was, looking as sneaky and sinister as always. "Princess," he said, "how may I be of service?" Princess Jasmine looked at him sharply in the eye. "Jafar, the guards just took a boy from the market on your orders." "Your father has charged me with keeping peace in Akrabar," Jafar said. "The boy was a criminal. He tried to kidnap you." "He didn't kidnap me," Jasmine replied. "I ran away." Jafar browed, creasing concern. "Oh dear, how frighteningly upsetting. Had I known," his voice trailed off. "What do you mean?" Jasmine asked. "Sadly, the boy's sentence has already been carried out." Jasmine shuddered. "What sentence?" Jafar sighed. He put a hand on Jasmine's shoulder. "Death," Jafar said softly. "By beheading." A gasp caught in Jasmine's throat. How could you?" She turned and ran, not stopping until she reached the mangerie. Raja bounded happily toward her, but Jasmine ran right by him. She collapsed by a fountain, tears running down her cheek. "Do you trust me?" the boy had asked her. Yes, she had. This boy was so different from the others, funny, kind, and friendly. And now he was dead. Because of a stupid mistake. "Oh, Raja," she said, "this is all my fault. I didn't even know his name." Jasmine buried her head in Raja's fur and wept. Chapter 5. The palace dungeon was cold, dark, and dirty. Not even the Sultan had ever entered it. All prisoners were brought here by Jafar, and not one had escaped. Aladdin was determined to be first. He grunted loudly, struggling at his chains, but he held fast to the stone wall. Jafar had lied to Jasmine. Aladdin was alive, but not for long. With everything went according to Jafar's plan, Aladdin collapsed to the floor with a sigh. She was the princess, he said to himself. I can't believe it, Jocelyn. Just then, a shadow appeared on the wall, the shadow of a small monkey poised between the bars of the prison window. Abu! Aladdin cried, spinning around. Down here! Abu hopped down. He frowned at Aladdin and chattered angrily as he did an imitation of a pretty girl walking. Aladdin knew he was being scolded for paying too much attention to Jasmine. Hey, she was in trouble, he said. I'll never see her again anyway. I'm a street rat, remember? Besides, there's some law that says she's gotta marry a prince. He exulted with frustration. She deserves a prince. Abu pulled a small pick out of his vest pocket and unlocked Aladdin's cuffs. Grinning with triumph, he pulled Aladdin toward the window, but Aladdin just slumped to the floor. He was still thinking of Jasmine. I'm a fool, he said. You're only a fool if you give up, came a crackety voice. Aladdin turned to see an old snagger-toothed man humbled out of the shadows. His white beard hung to the floor, and he had a hump on his back. He looked as though he had been in the dungeon for years. Who are you? Aladdin asked. I'm a lonely prisoner like yourself, but together perhaps we could be more. I know a cave filled with treasures beyond your wildest dreams. The man shuffled closer, smiling. There's a treasure enough to impress your princess, I'd wager. Abu's eyes lit up at the mention of treasure. He tugged at Aladdin's vest. Neither of them saw Iago peek out from the old man's hump and whisper, Jafar, could you hurry up? I'm dying in here. Aladdin gave the prisoner a forlorn look. But the law says she has to marry. Jafar cut Aladdin off. He raised a bony finger and spoke once again in the old man's voice. You've heard of the golden rule. Whoever has the gold makes the rules. Why would you share this treasure with me? Aladdin asked. I need a young pair of legs and a strong back to go in after it. Jafar walked to the dungeon wall and pushed one of the stones. Slowly, an entire section of wall opened, revealing a hidden stairway. So, do we have a deal? Aladdin was hesitant, but he shook the old man's hand. Jafar cracked with excitement. We're off! It was dark by the time they reached the Cave of Wonders. Jafar took out the scarab pieces and fit them together once again. Aladdin stared in awe as the pieces flew into the sandstone and the massive tiger god arose. Who do you think that old man really truly is? Who disturbs my slumber? The imitating voice boomed. Jafar motioned for Aladdin to go closer. Abu jumped into Aladdin's vest. Aladdin tried to keep from trembling. It is I, Aladdin. A tunnel of harsh light shot from the tiger god's mouth. Aladdin had to turn away. Proceed, the voice continued, touching nothing but the lamp. Quickly, my boy, Jafar urged him in an old man's voice. Fetch the lamp, then you shall have your reward. Cautiously, Aladdin stepped inside the tiger god's mouth. Through the blinding light, he saw a long stairway leading downward. At the bottom, there was mountains of gold. Cascades of gold, coins, jewels, plates, bowls, goblets, chests, all piled together as far as your eyes could see. Abu was practically hypnotized by the sight of all that gold and went straight for an enormous treasure chest. Abu! Aladdin warned, don't touch anything! We have to find that lamp. Abu grumbled, but turned from the chest and followed his master through the cave until he sensed a strange movement behind him. He spun around to look. Nothing, just a purple carpet with gold tassels lying on the floor. Abu turned and ran towards Aladdin. This time something tapped Abu on the shoulder, then snatched his hat. Abu spun around again. It was the carpet, walking along behind him. Ah! Abu shrieked, jumping on Aladdin for protection. In fright, the carpet quickly ran behind a large pile of coins. Cut it out, Abu, Aladdin said. Abu jaggered away, pointing to the large mound. Aladdin turned and saw a tassel stick out, then quickly pull itself in. Aladdin moved closer for a better look. He could see the carpet moving away from him. A magic carpet? He said. Then he called, Come on out. We're not going to hurt you. Using its two lower tassels as legs and its upper ones as hands, the carpet slowly emerged and handed Aladdin Abu's hat. Aladdin's mouth hung open in disbelief. Abu snatched the hat and began scolding at the carpet. The carpet slowly walked away, drooped over in shame. Hey, wait a minute, don't go, Aladdin said. Maybe you can help us find this lamp. The carpet whirled around and began pointing excitingly. Aladdin grinned. I think he knows where it is. Rising off the ground, the carpet began to fly. Aladdin and Abu followed it into another cavern. Aladdin stopped in its tracks. This cavern made the other one look like a waiting room. It stretched upward so high Aladdin couldn't see the ceiling. The walls were cool blue, unlike any color he had ever seen in the desert. A lagoon of aqua blue water stretched from wall to wall. In the center of the lake stood a tower of solid rock with only a series of stepping stones leading to it. On top, lit by a magical beam of light, was a small object, Jocelyn. It was too far away to see, but Aladdin knew that it must be the lamp. His heart began to race. It wouldn't be easy to get to the top. First, he would have to hopscotch across the rocks. Then he would have to climb the steep, jagged tower of rock. Wait here, he said to Abu and the carpet, and remember, don't touch anything. Springing from stone to stone, Aladdin arrived at the base of the tower. With a sudden groan, the sloping rock transformed into a staircase. Aladdin smiled. Something was on his side. He raced upward, 2 steps at a time. At the top, the lamp came into clear view. It was a dusty and dented, cheaping-looking little thing, used lamp, and he had ever seen in the marketplace. Aladdin picked it up. This is it, he said to himself. This is what I came all the way here for. Out of the corner of his eyes, he spotted Abu and the carpet. They were in front of a large golden statue that looked like a giant monkey idol. Its arms were outstretched, and its cupped palms, it held an enormous red jewel. Uh-oh. And Abu was reaching right for it. Abu! Aladdin shouted. No! But it was too late. Abu had the jewel in his hands, and the ground began to rumble instantly, Jocelyn. Rocks and dust fell from above. The voice of the tiger god echoed like a cannon. Infidels, you have touched the forbidden treasures. Now you shall never again see the light of day. The jewel began to melt in Abu's hands. Panicked, he put it back into the palms of the statue. That bad monkey. You see what greed gets you? In a lot of trouble. But the damage was already done. The stairway beneath Aladdin transformed into a long chute, and his feet gave away. With a last-minute lunge, Aladdin grabbed the lamp. Tumbling down the chute, he saw the lagoon become a pool of boiling lava. He closed his eyes, bracing himself for the end. Whoosh! He stopped in midair. Something was pushing him upward. His eyes sprang open. The carpet had caught him, and it was whisking him away. The cavern shook it violently, and Aladdin held tightly to the carpet. It dodged right and left as large rocks fell from the ceiling. Aladdin looked down, searching for Abu. Came a cry from below. There he was, hopping across the stepping stones and screeching. Over his head, a boulder huddled toward him. With a burst of speed, the carpet streaked down, and Aladdin plucked Abu away from danger just in time, and then flew towards the cavern entrance. The ground below erupted as the piles of dazing treasures burst into flames. Aladdin and Abu looked down in horror. The coins and the jewels were melting. The carpet raced to the stairway, charred by a wave of lava. They could see the starry night sky through the entrance above, just a few more feet. Thunk! A jagged piece of rock fell onto the carpet, pinning it to the ground. Aladdin and Abu tumbled onto the stairs. Aladdin looked down at the carpet in dismay. There was no way he could save it. It would be hard enough to save himself. You see what greed gets you? Look at Abu's eyes. He looked up. He could see the opening at the top. Freedom! Freedom! Freedom, Jocelyn! Abu scaled the steps and hopped outside. Aladdin followed as fast as he could, but the stairs began to shake. He lost his footing. Springing to his feet, he lunged for the top step. His fingers clutched on it just as the entire stairway buckled beneath him. Aladdin dangled over the collapsing cave. "Help me!" he cried. "I can't hold on!" Still dressed as the beggar, Jafar peeked over the edge. "First, give me the lamp!" There was no time to argue. Aladdin held it out. Jafar's eyes gleamed as he grabbed the lamp and stuffed it into his robe. "At last!" he shrieked in triumph, leering at Aladdin. He pulled out a dagger. "What are you doing?" Aladdin cried. "Giving you your reward," Jafar replied. "Your eternal reward." Abu leaped at Jafar, biting him hard on the arm. "Ah!" Jafar screamed. He fought hard, but Abu held tight. Finally, Jafar dropped the dagger. With a furious gesture, he flung Abu into the cave, and Aladdin's fingers could hold on no longer. He let go. The walls of the cavern raced by him as he and Abu fell head over heels. Chapter 6. Aladdin awoke on the cave floor. The fire was out, the lava gone. Only the sturdy drip of water echoed throughout the cave. On top of him laid the carpet and Abu. Aladdin groaned and sat up. The carpet fell off and Abu began to stir. Above him, Aladdin can see no opening, only the solid ceiling of the cavern. "We're trapped," he said. "That two-faced son of a jackal! He's long gone with that lamp." Abu jumped up. Something bulged in his vest. A jewel? Aladdin figured. Like a magician, Abu waved his arms, reached into his vest, and pulled out the hidden object. Aladdin blinked and shook his head. It was the lamp. "Why, you little thief," Aladdin said with a smile. He took the beat-up lamp and studied it carefully. "There's something written on it, but it's hard to make out." Aladdin rubbed the faded words with a sleeve. It was almost impossible to get a grime up. He rubbed harder and harder and then suddenly stopped. The lamp was glowing, Jocelyn. Aladdin gasped. "Ah!" Abu and the carpet backed away. Then poof! Colorful smoke erupted from the lamp's spout. It whirled crazily. glowing into a blue cloud, slowly forming into a shape, an enormous flowing shape with arms, a chest, a head, and a wide-eyed face with a long black curling beard. 10,000 years will give you such a crick in the neck, the blue creature said. Aladdin and Abu watched as he had grabbed his own head and twisted it all the way around, Jocelyn, all the way around. Wow, does that feel good, he said. Nice to be back, ladies and gentlemen. Hi, what's your name? Aladdin? Hello, Aladdin. Can I call you Allie? Or Al? Or maybe just Din? Or how about Laddie? Here, boy, come on, Laddie, Laddie, Laddie. He whistled and pretended to call a dog. Then in another puff of blue smoke, he became a giant dog. His eyes wide, Aladdin turned to the carpet. I must have hit my head harder than I thought. The creature changed back to its original form. Say, you're a lot smarter than my last master, he said. Wait a minute, Aladdin said. I'm your master? That's right. And I'm your genie, direct from the lamp, right here for your wishful fulfillment. 3 wishes, to be exact. And oxyry on the wishing for more wishes. 3. 3 is all you get. That's it. No substitutions, exchanges, or refunds. 3 wishes, Aladdin said. Any 3 I want? Almost, the genie replied. There are a few limitations. Rule number 1. I can't kill anybody, so don't ask. Rule number 2. I can't make anybody fall in love with anybody else. And rule number 3. I can't bring back people from the dead. Other than that, you got it. Aladdin liked this genie. He decided to tease him a little. Limitations, he sighed. Some all-powerful genie. I don't know, Abu. He probably can't even get us out of this cave. The genie put his hands on his hips. Excuse me? You don't believe me? Jumping onto the carpet, he scooped up Aladdin and Abu in his mammoth hands. You're getting your wishes, so sit down and we're out of here. He put them down, then swung his arm overhead. A thunderous boom resounded above them, and a crack opened in the cave's ceiling. Rocks and sand fell aside, and early morning light poured in. The carpet began to rise. It spiraled upward, picking up speed. Aladdin held tight as the genie reared back and let loose a laugh that shook the walls. Ha ha ha! Aladdin could keep from laughing himself. The desert air never smelled so good. He was free. And he still had his how many wishes? 3 left. Chapter 7. Jafar, this is an outrage, the Sultan yelled, pacing the throne room. From now on, you to discuss sentencing of prisoners with me before they are beheaded. Princess Jasmine scolded at Jafar as he bowed his head. On his shoulder, even Iago looked sorry. My humblest apologies to both of you, Jafar said. At least some good will come of my being forced to marry, Jasmine said. When I am queen, I will have the power to get rid of you, Jafar. With that, she stalked out to the mangerie. Jasmine, the Sultan called, running after her. Jafar watched them leave. His sad, sorrowful look began to disappear. All his rage and frustration bottled up. If only I had gotten that lamp, he muttered through clenching teeth. To think, we've got to keep kissing up to that chump and his chump of a daughter the rest of our lives, Iago said. Until she finds a chump husband, Jafar remarked, then she'll have us banished or beheaded. Wait a minute, Jafar, Iago said. What if you marry the princess? Then you become the Sultan, right? Jafar walked slowly to the throne and sat down. It felt wonderful. He said. The idea has merit. Yeah, Iago squawked. And then we drop Papa-in-law and the little woman off a cliff. Curse, splat! Jafar busted out laughing. I love the way your little fluid mind works. In a desert oasis just outside of Aqrabar, the carpet swooped down to the sand. The genie turned to Aladdin with a proud grin. Well, how about that, huh? Do you doubt me now? Nope, Aladdin said. Now, about my 3 wishes. 3, the genie said. You're down by 1, boy. Aladdin smiled mischievously. I never actually wished to get out of that cave. You did that on your own. The genie thought for a moment. All right, he said with a laugh. You win, but no more freebies. Aladdin hopped off the carpet and began pacing around. 3 wishes. What would you wish for? Me? No one's ever asked me that before. The genie thought it over for a moment. Well, in my case, freedom. You mean you're a prisoner? Aladdin asked. That's what's being a genie all about, the genie shrugged. Phenomenal cosmic powers, itty bitty 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 living space. The carpet, Abu, and Aladdin peered inside the small lamp. Genie, that's terrible, Aladdin said. To be free, to be my own master, that would be greater than all the magic and all the treasures in the world. The genie sighed. But the only way I can get out of this is for my master to wish me out. So you can guess how often that's happened. Aladdin thought about this for a moment. I'll do it, he finally said. I'll set you free. Yeah, right, the genie said, rolling his eyes. No, I'm not lying, Aladdin said. I promise, after my first 2 wishes, I'll use my 3rd wish to set you free. Okay, here's hoping, said the genie. Now, what is it you want? Well, Aladdin said, there's this girl. Wrong, I can't make anyone fall in love, remember? But genie, she's smart and fun and beautiful. Aladdin shrugged and looked at the ground. But she's a princess, and to even have a chance, I'd have to be... That was it. The answer was right in front of him. Hey, Aladdin said, can you make me a prince? The genie raised an eyebrow. Is that an official wish? Say the magic words. The genie raised an eyebrow. Oh, he did again. Genie, I wish for you to make me a prince, Aladdin blurted. All right. The genie began circling around Aladdin. Now, first, we have to get rid of that fez and vest combo. With a sweeping gesture, he conjured up a robe of fine silk and a turban with a dazzling jewels shining gold trim. Ooh, I like it. Wow, Aladdin could hardly believe how princely he looked. No one could dare call him street rat now. He picked up the lamp and hid under his turban. No decent prince would dare be seen with such a piece of junk. You'll need some transportation. The genie looked at Abu. Excuse me, monkey boy. Abu shot away, trying to hide, but it was no use. With a snap of his fingers, the genie turned him into a camel. Not good enough, the genie said, snapping his fingers again. This time, Abu appeared as a magnificent stallion. Still not enough. With a decisive snap, Abu was transformed again, this time into an elephant. What a better way to make your entrance down the streets of Akrabar than riding your very own elephant. Talk about trunk space. Aladdin could do nothing but stare, dumbfounded. The genie was on a roll. He gestured wildly, laughing at the top of his lungs. "Hang on to your turban, kid," he shouted. "We're gonna make you a star." And on that note, we'll see you Friday for when Aladdin has become Prince Ali. Have a blessed couple of days.